Today on the Playbook podcast, the Dems have caved and it looks like the shutdown is coming to an end. Another day, another foreign leader at the White House, this time a visit by a Syrian president, and Donald Trump takes out another media outlet, but this time it's overseas. Hello, I'm Jack Blanchard.
And I'm Dasha Burns. It is Monday, November 10th.
And this is the Playbook podcast. Dasha, it feels like we're going to get there.
Wow, happy Monday, everybody. This could be it after a very, very long stretch.
40 days and 40 nights. It's a biblical...
it is biblical,
a biblical
isn't it?
shutdown.
Wow. What is that symbolism about, huh?
It really looks like we are now creeping towards an end. As most people listening to this podcast will know, there were enough Democratic senators last night who decided to pull the plug on the shutdown, the procedural. They now have the numbers to get a procedural deal through, and it looks like a deal is going to be going to the House this week to finally end the government shutdown. And Dasha, the biggest, noisiest thing about all that is the civil war that is breaking out in the Democratic Party right now.
It looks very, very messy because it's not like all of the Democrats came together and decided we're going to move forward in one unified way and pull the plug on this thing. It was eight who decided that they were going to vote with Republicans and knowing fully well the wrath that was coming to them from some segments of the party. Chuck Schumer, the minority leader, decided to vote no, but that has not kept him out of the heat in any way. There is a lot of anger that I'm seeing with Schumer's leadership here. This is going to create quite a messy moment for Democrats and on the Hill.
You bet it is. I mean, all of the excitement and exuberance of last week's election victory just feels like it's gone up in smoke last night with this agreement by 8 Democratic senators to peel off and vote with Republicans to reopen the government. Suddenly we see a party in civil war again, and huge amounts of, dare I say, slightly performative social media outbursts by wannabe big names in the Democratic Party sort of falling over each other to condemn these people, anyone who's anyone in the 2028 leadership race, anyone who's anyone wanting to become a senator next year, coming out and sort of proving their purity to the base by saying how terrible it is that these eight Democrats have done a deal. For a party that was looking for some momentum and finally felt like it had remembered how to win again, it feels like a pretty big setback from that point of view, at least.
The argument that Democrats who decided to vote yes are making is that they say they got some concessions from Republicans, that they will get a vote on healthcare, which means that they will get to place that very squarely on Republicans. It very likely is not going to pass. But if they do get that vote, which they have got the commitment for, then they get to at least very clearly say to the American people, we did what we could, and Republicans said no. The other argument that they're making is that they get to reverse some of the rifts that happened to federal workers during the shutdown. And overall, they were saying last night during a press conference when they certainly got grilled by the media about why do this when they did, that it became clear to them that Republicans in the White House, that they were not going to have even the conversation on healthcare without reopening the government. But that's been the line for many weeks. So there was a lot of consternation from people about why they dragged this out for so long. That was a lot of the line of questioning that those senators got.
Well, here's the thing, right? We've had various government shutdowns over the last 30 years or so in this country. No one has ever got what they wanted.
And we keep doing it.
So, the idea that this time they were suddenly going to get however many hundreds of billions of dollars or whatever it was spending out of this always felt a little bit far-fetched, right? That probably wasn't going to happen. And therefore, what is the point of the exercise? Well, the point of the exercise was two things. It was to show the base, the Democratic base, that no, we are going to fight as hard as we can. And, they forced the longest government shutdown in American history. What's the other point is they've really raised the awareness of this Obamacare subsidy issue. They've really made that a political dividing line between the two parties. And as you say, they may have got what may prove to be a pretty meaningless vote on it out of the shutdown, but both sides will have to lay down where they stand on this. And as those payments go up for people, and people are going to be struggling to pay for their health insurance, Democrats can say, as you say, well, look, we did our best to make this happen, and here they are voting against it. And maybe, politically, that could prove to be quite a seriously important thing come 2026.
Yeah, and honestly, the way that these things work politically, there's the infighting for Democrats is not a good look, but I don't know that the senators that decided to vote with Republicans are ultimately going to get sort of pummeled in their own states just because the frustration had reached a fever pitch with this shutdown. I mean, most Americans just wanted this thing to be done with, and these are moderate Democrats that voted yes, and I don't know that their voters will be particularly shocked. I think the more damaging thing for Democrats is how this process played out for them in terms of leadership or lack thereof.
And I think the other thing is, like, the history of shutdown shows us that the shutdown itself doesn't tend to have much impact on the midterms or whatever, right? On the future elections. We haven't seen, everyone remembers how 2013 played out. Well, Republicans still did great in 2014 when it came to the midterms. Like who wins or loses the shutdown is not really going to be top of voters' minds when they finally go to the polls next year. But what might be top of their minds is the fact they can't afford their health insurance anymore, and who do they blame for that? And that sort of issue actually can be a lot more salient than the political machinations that we all get very excited about when we're watching things closely in DC.
Yeah, that's totally right. I mean, similarly to this election we had last week, like the shutdown may not impact the midterms directly. What it will impact are some of the narratives and the lessons that folks are going to take away from this to develop a strategy going into 2026.
I got shared some really interesting polling on the Obamacare subsidies by a company called Stack Data. They did like an 8,000 person survey. 71% of Americans said they were concerned about the subsidies ending. That is a really, really big number. That's like nearly 3/4 of Americans. And that included more than 50% of people who self-identified as MAGA Republicans. More than half of people who describe themselves as a MAGA Republican said they were concerned about this. So this is Donald Trump's own people. Is it possible he's going to end up cutting a deal on this anyway in the next few weeks? Doesn't feel like it at the moment, right? But like, he knows his voters very well.
He does. And like a lot of the people that have been pointing to this looming problem over the course of this year, really, for me, have actually been Republicans that are looking at GOP polling, like polling that's done by groups that poll for Trump and for high profile Republicans, and that is who has been like waving the red flag to me. Now that we're close to the shutdown ending, and everyone's been saying we'll have the conversation then. Well, let's see how this conversation actually goes, because I think it will have to be had, just given how much of an impact it's going to have.
We will hear from President Trump tonight. He's doing a Fox News interview with Laura Ingraham. Do you think he'll be able to resist having a little gloat? Do you think he'll be painting this as a famous victory? I think he probably will, won't he?
I would not be surprised, just knowing the patterns of the president. But he said some surprising things about the shutdown last week, blaming Republicans and their messaging, and saying it cost them the election. So who knows?
Who knows exactly? And he will, of course, still get asked about this broader issue about healthcare subsidies, and indeed about affordability, which we talked about this last week. He's been talking about a lot more, but not necessarily in the way that all of his advisors might want him to. And I suspect we'll hear more of that
That's right.
tonight as well. Let's talk about the other thing on Donald Trump's agenda today, which is a really interesting, like, almost feels like every day now he's meeting another world leader, something he's actually getting a little bit of criticism for, rightly or wrongly. Today he's hosting someone absolutely fascinating, the new Syrian president, Ahmed Sharaa. This is the first time a Syrian president has ever visited the White House, but that's not the most interesting thing about this. What's interesting, of course, about this guy is that literally a few months ago, he was on America's most wanted list. There was like a $10 million bounty on his head because he was officially like an Al Qaeda terrorist. And suddenly, like, here he's going to turn up in a suit and essentially be welcomed with open arms by the president because of how quickly the political picture has changed in Syria. It's not often you see a quote unquote terrorist in the White House, but that is what is going to be happening today in the way that America viewed him just a few months ago.
Boy, that is not a headline that that a lot of folks in MAGA world are going to want. And I do think that this is among the issues that will have some of the president's base pretty frustrated and concerned. You mentioned that he's gotten some criticism about the amount of foreign policy that he's been focused on, the amount of visits that he's getting. I mean, that has been a frustration from MAGA world, even with the most innocuous world visits, or his trip to Asia, which didn't have the level of controversy that this visit from the Syrian president to the White House will.
But I think he just enjoys it. Don't you reckon? He just looks to me like he really enjoys dealing with these people.
Oh, one of his favorite things is meeting with the guys that no other president will meet with, right? He wears that as a badge of honor. I have the conversations that no one's willing to have. I will shake the hands that no one's willing to shake to get things done. That has been basically his foreign policy brand from the beginning.
Another big win for Donald Trump over the weekend. You know he likes to take on media organizations, and he's had a few in his pocket over the last few years. Well, over the weekend, the White House helped to decapitate the BBC from my neck
Whoa.
of the woods, as we say in the UK.
I was gonna say that's your people there.
Close to home, exactly. It's not often that the BBC loses the Director General and the CEO in the same day, stroke hour, but it happened yesterday because essentially of a very big row with the White House. If you haven't been following this, there was a big outcry in the UK last week when an internal report at the BBC found that a BBC documentary had unfairly spliced together parts of Donald Trump's speech on January the 6th, essentially make it look worse for him, make it look more like he'd incited the crowd than was in fact the case. At least that is how the report presented it. And the White House really lent into this, didn't they? Like Caroline Levitt and the White House press feed really went after the BBC, calling them fake news and so on. And here we get to Sunday. There was a gathering storm over in the UK, and the most important people at one of the world's very biggest broadcasters fell on their swords yesterday, and the president was in full gloat mode.
Of course, of course, and I'm sure that the press shop is pretty happy about it as well. I mean, this is an administration, especially in that comms world, that s- is aggressive, to put it mildly, when it comes to defending this president in any case where they believe that the media is being biased and unfair. And this is certainly going to be another notch for them.
At one of his biggest scalps so far, but I dare say there'll be more as the as the months go by. Before we go, should we talk about NFL? Did you watch the president yesterday taking in
Yes.
the Commanders game?
He always
Well,
finds the mic. He always finds the mic.
he always finds the mic. Exactly. I mean, he doesn't do things by halves. This was the first time a president had attended a regular season NFL game in like 40 years or something. But he didn't just sort of sneak in the back and just like watch a bit of the game out the box. No, they flew right over the stadium in Air Force One while the match was starting. Then, yeah, he finds himself, ends up in the commentators booth with Fox News chatting about Joe Biden during the game, as only he would.
Wherever you are, whether you're a political reporter that watches him all day, every day, or you're at a football game, you cannot escape the presence of this president.
I even saw one of the players doing the Trump dance when he scored a touchdown in the middle of the game, which must have delighted the president no end, I dare say. But
There
you're
you
right.
go. The
We
infamous dance at the touchdown line.
we cannot escape this guy, can we? All right, we better leave it there. Dasha, thanks so much for being with us. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back tomorrow. As ever, we've got more news and analysis in today's Playbook newsletter, which you can find at politico.com/playbook. And I guess we'll be back to talk more about the end of the shutdown. It's going to take a few days, right? We're not quite there yet, so we can probably drag
Not
this one out
quite
all week,
putting it to
Dasha.
bed on this podcast just yet, but
We've got a few more days to talk about the shutdown. If
we'll miss it when it's gone. No, we will not.
No, we really won't. And neither will all the federal workers who are probably desperate to get back to work. Okay, have a great day, everyone. Have a
Thanks,
lovely day.
everybody. Happy Monday.